My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com, and my special guest tonight is my good friend Maxxxwell Carlisle, and I've interviewed Max several times over years. And today we're going to be interviewing Max for our On the Record segment, which is where we talk with musicians about some of their favorite albums and bands. And Maxxxwell just chose Power of Privilege by the band Riot, which came out 1990, and it was released February 28th, 1990 to be exact. So let's get right into it, Max, and tell us why that album and why Riot means so much to you.
Yeah, well, sure. And first of all, Jason, it's always awesome to talk with you, man. And,
yeah, it's been a while. That's why I thought it was time to...
it has been a while. Too long, right?
Yeah, I thought it's time to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this album I chose by Riot. I mean, first of all, Riot is a band I really, really love, and it's a band that has been influential to me in terms of guitar playing, I should say, but also songwriting. And I think it's an interesting band in that even though the lineup has changed a lot down through the years, different vocalists and so forth, different guitar players, second guitar players, it's a band that has always maintained, I think, a really strong signature sound.
Yeah, and while I'm sure that you're heavily influenced by the guitar players in the band, they've also had quite a number of players. This is kind of like a launching pad, this band, for many people. Like the drummer who plays on this album, Bobby Jarzenbeck, he's played with Halford over the years. He's playing with Fate's Warning now. Also plays with Sebastian Bach. And I just interviewed him the other day, and he was telling me, he does a lot of sessions. And while he's thought of as a metal drummer, he said, I often, I do different types of music. A lot of times I'll actually do a country music session, so it's very interesting. And then there's another drummer in the band, Sandy Slavin, who was with the band in the 90s too, I think. He played with Ace Frehley from Kiss, so this has been a launching pad for a lot of people, this band.
That's a really good point. And, it's funny you mentioned Bobby Jarzenbeck. I've always enjoyed watching his videos on YouTube because he did some drum instructional programs a few years ago. He's got some really, really cool
awesome drummer.
Sort of drum demonstrations on there where he's hitting the cymbals behind his head and stuff like that. It's just incredible, technique that he's got.
Yeah, awesome drummer, and I think that's why he's in such a demand guy. Like I said, he's playing with Fate's Warning these days, but he tells me, in his downtime, he does a lot of session work for different types of music that you never believe that he played on.
Well, it's good to know that he's, that he can do a variety of stuff. I think it's good that he's getting those opportunities because so many musicians just get pigeonholed into one genre, or one category, and then it's hard for them to break out of that.
Now, you mentioned obviously the guitar players you were influenced by that have been through Riot. I know Mark Reel, who was kind of one of the founding members, and he died a couple of years back of cancer. And talk a little bit about how big of an influence was he specifically on you?
Well, yeah, I mean he has been a big influence, and again, it's not just his playing, but
writing.
It's the writing, and also sort of the guitar arrangements that he uses. The way he'll use harmony parts, but he'll use them kind of sparingly in songs, and it makes it. When he has a melodic line or something that you really want to get it stuck in somebody's head, he'll sort of reinforce a melodic line with some harmony parts. But on top of that, he's just a great sort of blazing, old school, kind of shred blues kind of guitar player. And I mean, he's, and again, the band has been very consistent over the years despite those changes. And I think that's probably, because of him, because he was always, not always, obviously not now, but up until he died, I mean, he was always the
one constant
key part of the band. And I think even after he died, they've got Riot 5 now, which is carried on, but I think they're sticking to the sound that Mark really established in the band, I think.
And are you surprised that they decided to carry on without him, or that the fans are kind of accepting it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, some bands
are able to do that.
Doesn't work. And some bands it does. I can't say that I'm surprised, but I guess just the way they did it, they changed the name slightly.
Yeah.
And, they got unfortunately his name escapes me at the moment, but they got a kind of a younger guy who plays lead on guitar in the band, and so I think they kind of looked at it as not only carrying on the band, but also kind of bringing a new generation into it. So
and I think
rather than trying to get somebody who is just going to be exactly like Mark, getting somebody who kind of could bring in something new.
Yeah, and it's not like Mark's in the band because they split into two fractions or something like that, or they tried to fire him and steal the band, or it's one of the he's not in the band because unfortunately he passed on and nobody had anything to do with that. It's not like the band was quarreling or fighting, and it's one of those things I think fans are accepting of it because Riot has always been one of those bands. You may laugh when I say this, but like I kind of compare it to Lynyrd Skynyrd in the sense that in Lynyrd Skynyrd you've had several members of the band die, and it's almost like they kind of carry the band on with new members and stuff, and people are accepting it. It's almost kind of like a way of life, if you know what I mean. More in Lynyrd Skynyrd's case, it's become more of a band, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I mean, I think there are bands like I guess Kiss is the obvious example of where some fans have accepted the changes and other fans absolutely hate it. But it's definitely Skynyrd, and I think Riot is also one of those bands where it has worked. And
I think part of the reason for in Riot's case is because they're one of those bands, I will say, even to this day, very underrated. I mean, I hear so many people in the metal community, such as yourself, Maxxwell, cite this band as a influence, and so many people just look up to this band, but they never were really the mainstream. They were never part of those. They never broke out in a big way. But yet, so many musicians have respect for this band.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, when you hear the songs and you hear the playing, I mean, it just I think to anybody that's a musician, I mean, that stuff really jumps out to you. And a big part of the reason why I chose the Privilege of Power is it's a concept album, and concept albums can be very difficult to pull off. They can be, they can end up as albums where it's just like you're playing music for musicians, and it doesn't connect well with the general audience. But I feel like on the Privilege of Power, they delivered an album that is complex in a lot of ways, but it is still 100% listenable and accessible to just a general metal fan. You can put on any track, just the single track, and listen to it and have a great time.
Yeah,
or you can listen to the whole album, one track after the next, and then it flows so seamlessly, and it brings it to a whole new level.
It's funny you say that because in prepping for an interview tonight, I did get on YouTube because I've heard a few Riot songs, but I'm not really familiar with a lot of their stuff, so I thought I better listen to some of the stuff. And I went on YouTube and I was listening. You can actually check out, like you said, each track that they got where you check out the entire album if you like. And I was checking out track by track. But just to give people an idea about how metal this is, I mean, I was getting off on some of the titles before I even played the tracks. Let's go down the list here. On Your Knees, Metal Soldiers, Runaway, Killer, Dance of Death, Storming the Gates of Hell, Marianne, Little Miss Death, Black, this is one I love, just the title alone, Black Leather and Glittering Steel. And then there's, Rocking with the Devil on a Spanish Highway. I mean, just the titles alone are so metal,
Yeah, it's true. And I think they've got like 3 songs on there that are more than 7 minutes long. So they've got a lot of epic tracks on there. And what's cool too is I think this album came at a very interesting time in the band's career because it's a concept album. Came out in 1990, and this was the album that followed Thundersteel.
Wow.
Which it was a really, really big album for them. So you can tell that, two albums.
Yeah.
And so you can tell that, they had Thunder Steel, and that was just a straight-ahead metal album. It's not a concept album. So many great tracks on that album.
Oh, yeah.
And then they wanted to do something to follow it. And so the sound of Privilege of Power, I mean, you can almost hear their thought process. It's like, okay, we're going to take Thunder Steel, and we're going to go even further. Then they took it into concept album territory, and it just came out really, really cool. And you listed those songs. They got so many cool songs on there. But then, they did some really interesting, really cool experiments. Things you wouldn't expect because they're clearly power metal songs.
Yeah.
But they did a lot of experimentation. I mean, there's a lot of, there's some brass sections.
Yeah,
some of the
horns I was reading. Yeah, horn section. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a horn, like on Your Knees, there's a horn section, and Killer, there's a horn section, and it's kind of a cool side note, but it's actually the horn section from Tower of Power.
Oh, yeah.
And so they've got these really, really tight, really tight trumpets and stuff. It's like it's the Tower of Power band.
And Tower of Power is the furthest thing from metal,
So, so unique and so cool. I mean, you've got some sounds on there that I think no one else has ever really replicated the sounds they got on that album.
And then, of course, you mentioned the track Killer, and that features Joe Lynn Turner from Rainbow and Deep Purple fame on that track. I don't know if you're aware of that, but he's on there. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, they've got dual vocals on there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned about this being a concept album. I was reading on the Wikipedia. It said that this album was more experimental than previous albums for the simple fact it was an attempt at a concept album. Now it's interesting because concept albums could go, like you said, one of two ways: really, really great, or really, really. I mean, I'm a huge Kiss fan, and let's mention the Music from Velder album. That is, Kiss is a huge band. They have most of their albums are really, really popular. That's the one album that the one stinker in the can. Everybody says, nah, they didn't really. That was kind of a miss. I mean, that's the one album that unless you're a diehard Kiss fan, you probably have never heard a lot of his songs because they're not played off on the radio too often. I remember when I was growing up, for years that album was kind of out of print, and then they reissued it years later. But that album sold so poorly that they decided not to even tour behind it. They were going to, and big plans to make a movie and everything, but it just kind of initially flopped, and they didn't even tour behind it, and they went right back in the studio, and they went back to being a hard rock band.
And I think that's a good example.
Yeah.
I think another example, maybe not quite as extreme as that one, but Nostradamus from Judas Priest.
Yeah.
I really love that album. I think it's a fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a masterpiece in some ways, but a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people just forget about it at best, and at worst they hate it. And but that's like the double disc concept album.
Yeah.
But so sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Like maybe it just depends on the audience too.
Yeah, and I think like in Judas Priest's case, it was just I think because too it was so different from what people expect of Judas Priest, and a lot of times fans are not willing to kind of go out there, of what the box of that band is or their comfort zone, so to speak. They hate hearing anything different,
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. That's a really good point.
And then I think another concept album that was really, really popular was like Queensryche Operation Mindcrime album. I mean that to this day I think is their best-selling album, and it was a real big hit. But then years later, when they wanted to try to have a second bite at the apple, they did Operation Mindcrime 2, and people kind of they went out and they supported the band and they bought it, but it wasn't as big of a hit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In fact, I think when people think of Operation Mindcrime, it's the first album they think of. But I'll tell you, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think the master of concept albums actually it's got to be Alice Cooper. First of all, he's a king of it because him and Bob Ezrin did all those great albums, and they continue to put out great like concept albums to this day.
Yeah, I think King Diamond has got to be up there too.
Oh yeah, definitely. For as far as modern guys, and then and even not so much metal, but I would say another great concept album that I'd have to kind of point to from 1980 would have to be Pink Floyd's The Wall. You know?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, something interesting about The Wall is I think this might be something that sort of works against it as a concept album. Is there are there are a handful of tracks on there where the individual songs are so powerful on their own, it almost overshadows the fact that it's a concept album.
Well, yeah, and I think where fans get confused with The Wall, like if you listen to just the album, it's a super album. Nobody can deny that. I mean, all the tracks are great, but I think a lot of people get confused when you go and watch the movie, and you're like, okay, what does this have to do with that? You know? And it's like, I guess the band trying to interpret their music in a different way, but that's the most confusing thing about The Wall is the movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just it's different, and I don't quite understand it to this day myself. But if you're the Pink Floyd fans, kind of dig it. It's kind of artsy and it's different. But part of what made The Wall so unique is Bob Ezrin, who did all those great Alice Cooper and Kiss albums. He was really into sound effects, and if you put on The Wall, all the songs have unique little whistles and bells and just different sounds going off, and that's what made that album so unique, Yeah.
I heard some story about one of the sound effects that was achieved by, they had a gong and then a pool of water. And you would do this thing where you would hit the gong and then you'd lower it into the water. It would change the pitch of the gong as it went down, something crazy like that. I'm just imagining all this stuff they must have had set up in the studio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could just imagine. And, even The Wall, I mean, you have, I think just last year, Roger Waters was on tour still with The Wall. He's kind of doing his interpretation, and he did a big video production of it, but he's kind of done his own version of it. So even all these years later, after, 40 years after it originally came out, they're still performing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I bet that'll be, at least some of the songs from the album, I bet that's going to be the kind of stuff where 100 years from now, when you have the equivalent of an orchestra that's playing the classics or something like that, I think they'll still be performing that stuff.
I mean that'll be next. Now, we got kind of off topic, but let me ask you, Max, what do you think of that as a musician yourself when, even recently Metallica's done it where they released an album of orchestration of their many hits,
I'm fine with it. I think if it's something that the band wants to do, then I say go for it. I remember when the Scorpions did an album like that. I think it's more than 10 years ago now, but it was really cool stuff. And I think if they can achieve something where they're able to deliver their music to an audience that maybe otherwise wouldn't have known about it or wouldn't have been interested in it, then I think that's definitely a success for the band. And I don't think it ever takes anything away from the the original versions of the songs. It's just
it's a different take,
new interpretation.
Yeah, it's a different take. Now, getting back to I want to ask you, like this specific album, I was noticing the album cover, and it's very interesting because it could almost be a interpretation like modern day society. I mean, I seen picture of album cover, which is somebody like these people looking in like almost like a storefront, and you got many different TVs kind of in the window, and every TV's on a different channel, kind of like watching what's going on in the world. I mean, back even in 1990 when people were still able to buy vinyls and CDs and cassettes. I mean, that was a very important part of packaging was the album cover. I mean, what are your thoughts on this specific album cover? When you saw it for the very first time.
Well, I think it's a really cool album cover. I mean, Riot has had some very odd album covers.
Yeah.
I think this is one of their better ones. And I think it fits the album and it fits the music perfectly. But I think you said something really interesting there, and I think that in a way this album cover is very relevant even today. I mean, if you look at it, and you can kind of see from the media and how people are influenced by different things and this kind of thing. And I mean, that's a big part of the stuff that's going on today.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I when I was looking at the album cover today online. That's kind of what really popped into my mind. Thinking we're talking about an album here that came out in 1990, and just the artwork alone is so. Talking about modern day, I mean, like you said, the media. I mean, I don't really care what aisle of the fence you fall on, but I will say it's interesting. Like, there's been stories like in the media recently where big tech is trying to control. Maybe because they're in favor of a particular candidate, they're trying to block people from being able to talk about certain stories, and they only want to. They want to be in control of what people can talk about, and even online, like you see with Facebook when you go on there, somebody doesn't like what you, how you respond to something on their page. Not only do they try to block you, but then they might report you because they don't. He dared have a different opinion than me. I mean, and very much modern day where freedom of speech, is really in play or really in danger, because there used to be a time where you could go online and have civil conversations, and you didn't have to always agree with one another. I miss the days of debate, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm old enough to remember, what I think of as the good old days of the internet.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are more and more, what's the word?
Politically,
on extreme sides of different topics. Yeah.
I mean,
just the idea of the difference between the internet being a sort of an open, like, hey, do whatever you want, good or bad, versus this is something that we're going to sort of police. I mean, there's good arguments for both. I think, and I'm sure the right thing is somewhere in the middle. But it's I mean, it's like was Riot looking into a crystal ball or something when they made it?
No, it's just interesting. I mean, it was probably relevant at the time, and it's still all these years later, it's still relevant. Just kind of interesting. I mean, even today as we speak, I was sitting here before I called you for an interview, and hearing one reporter talking about how one group of people saying, if my candidate doesn't win tomorrow, we're going to go out and riot. And I'm like, what is this world coming to? I mean, I'm not going to go out and riot if my candidate doesn't win. I mean, to me, it's not that serious,
Well, yeah, I mean, I really don't like that attitude either. And I think if you believe in a democracy, then you have to accept that you might be wrong and other people might be right. I mean, I'll vote for whoever I'm going to vote for, but if that person doesn't win, that's the way it goes. I mean, I have to admit, though, I mean, we're talking about this now, and I'm sure by the time people listen to us, they will know what happened. But
we're talking about it beforehand.
I got concerns, and I even went to the grocery store and stocked up on frozen pizzas, just in case the world goes crazy or something. I'll have something to eat.
Yeah, I mean, the album cover also got me thinking about again, modern day, like even just not being politically correct, or even or just or political about anything, but just the coronavirus and all the lockdowns. I mean, when I look back on 2020, I mean, the kind of I don't want to say it's funny, but kind of a weirdest thing that I went through was, besides not being able to go to work every day and having to work from home now, but is going to the store and people hoarding, toilet paper and then having to go all around just to get toilet paper, and you finally find it. You're only allowed to get 2 packages. And then I remember I went to Target, and that was the only place in the whole town that they had toilet paper, but they were only selling the $30 pack. But when you think on how just even just the other day, somebody asked me, "Hey, you go to the store? Could you get me some Campbell's vegetable beef soup?" Not, I kid you not. Ralph's Market, right? Not a can of Campbell's soup in the whole store, except for chicken and noodle.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been a totally bizarre year in so many ways, and there's like, there's a coin shortage. I think that's getting better. And
Yeah.
Like nobody had any change. It's weirdest stuff, you know. But yeah, you do have to wonder, you know, the privilege of power, right? You know, the power of the media and everything. You know, you have to, like, the toilet paper is a great example. You know, somebody on the news said, hey, in China, they're hoarding toilet paper because, you know, stuff gone. And then everybody saw that, and then everybody, you know, it's like there wasn't really a shortage to begin with. It was just because everybody freaked out and went and bought it, and, you know,
and I remember I heard too, when it first was going on, you know, in early March and April, that the toilet paper situation was so ridiculous that people were actually crossing the border and going into Mexico because they had a huge stock of it, you know, that's how crazy it got. And, you know, and you almost, I mean, you talk about privilege, you know, again, power, you know, it's interesting. The title of the album we're talking about is, you know, Privilege of Power. And again, just talking modern day, that is so what we're going through right now. I mean, even the governor of California, where we live, Maxxwell, I mean, he's got, you know, he's from a wealthy family. He's got many businesses on the side. He's got a wine gallery and wine country. And I was listening to some talk radio show the other day, and they were saying how, you know, he wants to shut everything down. And, like, I heard him talking about, you know, he's canceling things already for next year. He doesn't know if he's ever going to allow movie theaters to open up in California. He just ridiculous stuff. But he wants to keep everybody, you know, he's got a job, he gets paid. But like so many people, they just want to go back to work and be able to earn. And he wants to keep a lot of these businesses locked down, but yet, because he has a winery, one of the first places he allowed to open was the wine country. Kind of interesting, you know, when you want to talk about privilege.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you know, when stuff hits close to home, you know, then his attitude would change on it, you know. And we're talking about the album and music here. I mean, I think something we have to mention is
go ahead,
just how terrible it is for all the musicians. You know, I mean, there are people who, you know, something I think, just to take a step back, I mean, I think there's, you know, something that a lot of people don't understand about musicians is, you know, there are guys who don't make a living playing music. You know, they have like a little band that they play on the weekends or something. Yeah. It's just kind of a side thing. And then there are the handful of huge artists, right, who are doing the world tours and stuff. But most musicians are somewhere in between, and those are the guys, they can't go for 6 months or a year without playing a show, because that's you know, it's not only how they make their living, but they can't really go do something else, you know, that they really depend on that. And that's where most musicians are. Most of them are in that, you know, most touring musicians are in that situation.
That's their bread and butter. And you know, I'll give you a good example. You take the band Warrant, you know, they had a lot of big hits in the 80s and 90s, you know, especially all those Janie Lane albums. Now, you know, Janie Lane's no longer with us. He's passed on. Warrant, though, they carried on with Robert Mason. They people still continued, you know, up until recently, go see the live shows. But the thing is, those guys in the band, they're not, you know, all those big hits, they're not the ones that wrote the songs. The guy that wrote all those songs, you know, he's dead, unfortunately, but they get to make a living playing his songs. And so even on some of the newer albums with Robert Mason, when they go see Warrant, they don't want to hear the newer stuff. They want to hear the old stuff, you know. And so even just for those guys to a lot of the stuff now is, like you said, weekend gigs. Even though they were in a band that was all over MTV, these days they didn't write any of those hit songs. So a lot of times for those guys to even make any bank, they got to do a lot of touring. They got to sell a lot of merchandise, you know. And I think people would really be amazed at that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, it was already bad, you know. Even, I don't know, the past 5 or 10 years, you know. I mean, it's like it's. I shouldn't say bad, but it was tough. It was already pretty tough for those guys, and they really had to hustle, you know, to make things work. And when you take away the touring, it's like, well, that was basically the last thing they had. I mean, maybe they're still selling a few pieces of merch here and there for the diehard fans or something, but I mean, most of the merch that sold was at shows, and of course, the revenue from the concerts, it's all gone. You know? And if it was something where they say, okay, you know, and this date is coming, and for sure, this is when we can start again. You know, but when you don't know.
Yeah.
You can't even plan for the future when you don't know what's going to happen.
And then, talking again about privilege or power, some of these people are so power hungry. And what I mean by that is, again, I hate to be picking on the governor, but he put something out the other day about his rules for Thanksgiving. Not he doesn't want you having more than 3 people in your house. Must wear a mask. Must be 6 feet apart. Can't have no singing or chanting. I don't know how he thinks he's going to control.
Yeah, I know that. It's like singing is not recommended or something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on.
And then I was laughing the other day. He gets on TV and says, "Okay, now if we're going to allow kids to get their picture with Santa, they can't sit on Santa's lap. They have to wear a mask." And I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. But going back to your point about the entertainment business, it's amazing that something like wanting to lock everybody down and using this virus to do it. It's amazing because if you stop and think about, for example, I heard them talking about they don't even know if they're. Because this last year we have hardly had any new movies come out. So what are we going to do at the Oscars next year? I've heard them talking. We may not even have an Oscar event, or and they don't know when they're going to allow movie theaters to open up. So the whole movie industry could be ruined. Who knows? And like you said, even the local clubs here, like the legendary clubs, like the Whiskey A Go Go and the Troubadour, are in danger of closing down. And then if all these places close down, when they do allow bands to go out and play, there's going to be nowhere to play.
Yeah, it's true. As weird as 2020 has been, I bet the bigger problems are still down the road.
Yeah.
That's just going to be from the fallout of all this stuff. I guess you and I do have to remember that we're in California,
Yeah.
and I think this stuff is it's worse in California than a lot of other places.
Yeah.
So that's a positive note, I guess. I think there are a lot of other states and certainly other countries where things are getting back to normal more quickly.
Yeah, and then there's a part of me too that thinks maybe tomorrow's the election, maybe the next day everything will magically reopen. We hope. Who knows? But but I will tell you, getting in reference to the entertainment business, one positive thing I've seen is like a lot of musicians have been like having these streaming events online, and it's not the ideal situation, maybe, but I dig the fact that they're finding a way, to play out, maybe a little differently, not your typical live performance, but so they can still do stuff, maybe make a living a little, do stuff for the fans. And then there's a club called the Gas Lamp in Long Beach where I live. I live right down the street from this place, and what they've been doing lately is they're not allowing people in the club, but the band they can have bands like play inside the club, and then they project the performance like on a big movie screen. People can go hang out in the parking lot, and again, it's not ideal situation, but I dig the fact that it's kind of finding a way around that.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't heard of that. That's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, and now let me ask you, Max. And getting back to Riot, we've been talking about this great album came out in 1990. Now, I'm assuming you were probably a Riot fan before this album came out.
Well, before 1990?
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, since we're talking about Riot and this specific album, do you remember? Was it this album, or was there a song on this album that you heard that or was there a friend of yours that kind of turned you on to the band?
Oh man, that's a tough. I don't
remember.
I've got to remember pretty far back.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. This album was not the first album that I heard from Riot.
Yeah.
There was other stuff I heard before. I definitely heard Thunder Steel before, but I think I probably heard like Swords and Tequila first, or something like that. One of the real classic Riot tracks.
Yeah.
I think I heard that first, and then kind of just dove into the band's catalog then.
That's interesting. Now, I forget what album it was, but there's this one classic album. Like you said, some of their album artwork was very unique, but one of their more popular albums, it's like a picture of like just this weird looking owl, but it is such an iconic album cover. A lot of times I even see it displayed on different websites and stuff because people think of Right. That's kind of like the go-to album.
Yeah, they've got. Yeah, it's almost like a mascot for the band.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, but see, but the album cover was so unique that we remember it.
Yeah, that's true. So it was successful.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, and able to go to a record store. I mean, I remember seeing like Iron Maiden's Number of a Beast album for the very first time, and not even having ever heard of Iron Maiden song. I just thought, that album cover looks so cool. I got to get it,
Oh yeah. There's a lot of albums that I bought based totally on. I'm just like, oh god, that cover's so cool, man. It's gotta sound good, right? Although that's disappointed me a few times too, but
yeah.
Man, and I hate to, we're just gonna be, sounding like a couple of old guys complaining about this, but I feel like, we've totally lost that. I mean, I guess you do have more music videos now, and that's a cool thing. But as far as album covers, it's just like you almost got to work to go and find what the cover is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. If you want something bad enough, you can find it. Like, I do get a lot of my music, like, no other choice. Like, I go on Amazon and you can find almost anything on there. But, but I do miss going, and it used to be a real experience, like going to a record store and I'd hang out for hours, and I'd be planning, I get paid next week. What am I going to buy, next? And they used to, like Tower Records, they used to have major events. Like I remember when Guns N' Roses went to the one in Hollywood, and they did a big signing for like that Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. But but sometimes like you said, we sound like a bunch of old guys, but people really miss out on the experience that we had because like everybody wants everything so immediately. Probably when you were growing up like me, Max, I mean, it was predated the internet, and so you go see a band live. Today somebody could look up, somebody's going to come to their town. Oh, they're not playing that song in the set. Before you go what's in the set list, what's not. You read reviews online. There's no anticipation like there used to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess the sort of having so much information available. I mean, it's good for some things, but it also kind of ruins it does ruin the experience in some ways too.
Well, I'll tell you the kind of modern day technology, like music being a lot more digital these days. The only thing I kind of dig about the modern way of releasing music, where a lot of bands are doing it like one track at a time, and then maybe when they get enough songs out, they'll put out a full-length album. But back in the day when these classic albums were made, bands would go in the studio and they'd kind of, in Riot's case, we got to stay within the Riot box, and we got to make sure all the songs on this album sound the same. With the way bands are doing it these days, that's not necessarily as important. You could have an album where you got 10 tracks that sound completely different, but that's not a bad thing because maybe they were written at different times in the year. Maybe some of the songs are 5 years old. Maybe some are freshly written, and so depending on when the song was written, what it's about, what the person experienced in their life that made them write this song. So I think that's one cool aspect of doing it the modern way.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that it gives bands more freedom that way too.
Yeah. Now, what are some of your favorite songs on this album?
Well, the opening track is a great one for sure.
On Your Knees.
And also, I think there are some tracks that are actually quite similar, like I think it's Dance of Death and Storming the Gates of Hell. Those songs are very similar, and they have them back to back on the album. And so you can listen to one, and that song ends, and then it quickly goes into the next one, and it almost makes it seem like
it's one long song almost.
Exactly, like it's just sort of a continuation of the song. But I mean, those are both great. I mean, the one you mentioned earlier, Black Leather and Glittering Steel, it's a great one. Killer is a really good song. I mean, it's very, very, it's a fun song, and they just do some really, really cool things in there. Like they've got some little brass sections in there, and the guest vocals, and and Metal Soldiers is great too.
Yeah, and I and again, if you're a metal fan, this is all pure metal. I mean, you go down the list, and they're just not. I mean, it's like, kind of Judas Priest, the defenders of the faith, in the sense that, how Priest always say, we're flying the flag of metal. This is another band that you could kind of think of like that, and they do so very, proudly. And the other thing I will say about the song "Killer," I don't know if you're aware of this, but that's actually not an original song. It's by this guitar player I don't know if I'm pronouncing it Aldemano, but I hear guitar players always citing him as an influence.
Al Di Meola.
Yeah, there you go. But that's originally one of his tunes, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget which album that was originally on by him, but yeah, and it's kind of funny because he's not really associated. I mean, he's a great guitar player, and I think he's very highly respected among guitar players, but he's not really associated with metal.
That's what's interesting, yeah. But they kind of, they made this their own. Now, what do you think? Because I know you've covered quite a number of songs yourself by other artists. Like, what do you think of like when a band like Riot takes a song like that and they kind of really, in their case, metal it up and they make it their own?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great when people change the genre of a piece of music. I think it's really cool when they do that. I mean, I'll say this. I think it's even cool when somebody takes like a pop song and turns it into a metal song. A handful of power metal bands have done that, and I mean, of course, I'm biased, but I mean, it's it just makes the song better, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember years ago interviewing Frankie Banali, who recently passed away, the drummer from Quiet Riot, and he was telling me, they did those 2 Slade songs, and he was telling me, here's the thing, he says, it was kind of an even trade-off. He says, Quiet Riot kind of got the fame, and the guys in Slade got all the money, which is kind of interesting, because at that time, Slade wasn't as popular as they once were, but I don't know how much you are into glam metal or anything like that, but I'll tell you, they recently put out this Slade compilation, and man, I didn't realize how many great songs that they had, and I got it's kind of like a 2-disc greatest hits, and I didn't realize how many great songs they had, but it's interesting.
That's probably something I should look into more. I mean, some bands are like that, where you might know 2 or 3 songs, but when you really get into their catalog, it's like, oh man, it's just like it doesn't stop. And it's great when you can find a band like that.
Yeah, and I mean, even though Slade is, they've been disbanded for like many years now, but it's almost like it's because, like I said, it's 2 CDs, and it's almost like if you've never heard of a lot of the stuff they did, it's almost like hearing a new album. At least it was in my case. and I was checking stuff out. Now, before we move on in the interview, is there anything else you want to say about Riot or this album in particular, Max?
No, not too much. I think we've pretty much covered it. I mean, anybody who's just a fan of classic metal, I think if they're not familiar with Riot, definitely check it out, because they've got so many great albums. But in particular, I think they should check out Thunder Steel, the previous album, and then The Privilege of Power. Those 2 albums, those back-to-back albums are just absolute killers.
Yeah, and then I wanted to ask you, because like I said, it's been a while since you and I last talked, and I got on your Facebook page, and I've been noticing over the last year that something you recently got into, I don't know how recent it was, but just in the last year or so, is you're now into become a pilot?
Yeah, that's right. I started working on that at the end of last year, and it's been going it went a little slow because of all the
lockdown stuff,
the lockdown restrictions and so forth. But I actually just finished my private pilot certification about a month ago. So I'm not a commercial pilot. I'm not going to be flying airlines or anything. I'm a licensed pilot now. So.
And so, like, what are you licensed to fly? Like you said, not airline jets or anything, but like those little tiny jets, like one man.
Yeah, well, the technicalities of it is just that I'm not for hire. I can't be paid.
Yeah,
to fly, and then depending on the specific airplane, there are different sort of things you have to be certified for. If it has multiple engines versus one engine, you have to have a different certification for that and things like that.
Oh, wow.
But But yeah, the main thing is as a private pilot, I can fly all around. And, I can go land at LAX if I want to and that kind of stuff. But I can't be paid to do it, basically.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Now, is this something you were always interested in, or you kind of just I want to see if I can do this, or what that would be like?
Well, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try and condense it a little bit here, but basically, it has always been something I've been interested in. I've always been into airplanes, aviation. And I'm really into like space stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
And I used to build model airplanes when I was a kid with my dad and so forth. And I had a grandfather who was in the Air Force, so it was always something I thought was cool, growing up. But I never thought of it as something that I would actually do. And I think a big part of that was that everybody that I personally knew who was a pilot had come from the military. And so in my head, I thought, well, if you're going to be a pilot, you basically have to be in the military, and then you can retire from that and go for an airline or something. So I just had kind of a skewed idea of how to become a pilot.
Wow.
But then I met this guy through a work situation.
Wow.
And he's, a guitar player, and, we were buddies and stuff, and talking about albums, and, just like you and I are and stuff. And then at one point he mentioned, he's like, oh, hey, you ever want to come for a flight? I've got a little airplane, and it's a lot of fun. And it just kind of blew my mind, because he was, he wasn't like an ex-military guy or anything like that.
Wow.
And he was a private pilot, and so I went for a few flights with him, and it was just like, oh man, I've always wanted to do this, but never really thought about it as something realistic. And and he told me all about it. He's like, no, you go through the training just like anything else, and you can do it.
As far as your training,
I started thinking about it as something that I really wanted to do. But then the other part of it was that for a long time, I was working a regular day job.
Of course,
I didn't really have the time to devote to it, and so it wasn't until my YouTube stuff and my music got built up enough where I can be like, okay, I don't have to go to a regular day job, and I can spend a big chunk of time working on this, and then I was finally able to do it.
And so your friend that kind of got put the idea in your head, was he your trainer, or did you go to another professional trainer?
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't an instructor. He was a private pilot himself.
Yeah.
To do the training, you have to go with somebody who's like specifically an instructor.
And so, what was the toughest part? I mean, I imagine before you even get in the plane, there's like you're in a classroom. There's a lot of reading and a lot of stuff you got to be tested on before you actually get up in the plane.
Yeah, there is. I mean, you kind of do it. You do it simultaneously, because when you're up there with the instructor, obviously they're keeping you out of trouble. For the most part, but the real hard stuff is there are a ton of regulations that you have to learn, and different types of airspace and what the definitions of them are, and how to tell when you're in one and when in the other. That's difficult. Another difficult thing is actually learning to talk on the radio.
Oh wow!
The ATC radio.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because that's a very, it's, the way you talk on there, it has a lot to do with context, and because you don't want to say any more than is absolutely necessary. You're not having like long conversations on there, so everything that you're saying, you have to understand the context of what it
said.
means.
Yeah. I mean, a perfect example of that, I would think, would be like, the Kobe Bryant crash. First of all, I don't even know why they would go up in the fog, but that's another story. But so are these like single engine planes that you fly?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, what was the number of hours you had to complete to get your certification?
Well, it varies because basically you do the training with an instructor. There's a written test that you have to take at some point in there, and then all the training you're doing is preparing you for. It's essentially like you'd go to the DMV and you take a driving test.
Yeah. Okay.
It's basically the same thing.
Wow.
So you go and you meet with somebody
Yeah.
So you're just preparing for that. But for me, it took about, it was about 80 hours or a little bit less than 80 hours, I think.
And is it something you're able to do often? I mean, because I imagine too that it must be just to rent the plane or whatever you got to pay to be up there in that plane. I mean, that's got to be a little bit expensive, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is, or at least it can add up quickly if you're not careful. But no, I mean, yeah, you do. There are some things that you would think would be more expensive, but they're really not. You have to have insurance for it, but the insurance is surprisingly cheap, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is incredible, really. But yeah, then obviously rental fees and things like that, and all things like that. But I just try to pick cool little places that are not too far away that I can fly to and that kind of stuff.
Now, have you been up there like solo yet, or even like taking your wife or one of your friends on a ride?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I just took my wife up on a flight for the first time.
Wow, what was that like?
Yeah, well, it was funny because my instructor had told me when I was doing my training, he was saying, hey, if you want to bring your wife on one of these lessons, she's welcome to come along. And I told her that, and she was like, no.
You get certified first, yeah. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. But no, when we went up the other day, she, in all honesty, she was nervous. But she ended up having a good time.
That's
and she
cool.
didn't get sick or anything like that. So I think that flew pretty well.
But I think even you, especially, I mean, anybody, and you tell me if I'm wrong, like the first time you kind of did go up there alone, was there any like nerves, or did you feel comfortable, like that, your training was good enough that you felt secure in your ability to do it?
I mean, there's a few big steps that you do when you're going through the training, and there's the first solo flight, which is a big one, but then after that, there's the first cross-country solo flight, and when they say cross-country, they just mean it has to be over 50 miles away.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And so when you do your first solo flight, you're just basically flying around the airport. It's just right in the area, and so for me, I felt ready, and that was a great accomplishment for me personally, but it wasn't like I wasn't too nervous about it, basically. But
I imagine, like you said, it's kind of like. I imagine, like you said, it's kind of like driving a car, and by the time you get your certification, you've been up in there enough where maybe you have that comfort level, but at the same time, I'm sure you're always cautious before taking off. Just look around.
Oh yeah, of course. But when it came to the cross country flight, I was pretty nervous on that one because there's a lot more variables in that one. When you go into a new place and things like that, that was a little nerve-wracking.
And I was curious because I've never done it, obviously, but like once you get your certification and as you're learning this stuff, what do you think is tougher, like taking off in the plane or landing?
Oh, landing is definitely more difficult. They have a saying. Among pilots, that it's taking off is optional, landing is mandatory.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's true. Now let me ask you, because I seen the video of you flying in the plane on your Facebook page. Like, what was that like to film? I mean, did you have a camera like on the plane, or was planted somewhere, or was somebody filming it for you?
Oh yeah, no, I just have like a little GoPro camera, and it's suction cupped to a window or something like that. So I just start it, and then I can forget about it, and just keep it running, and clip out the good parts and that kind of stuff, because I don't want to be screwing around with the camera when I'm trying to land.
Well,
like that.
That's why I asked. I know you weren't filming while you're flying, but I was kind of, because I know I've seen different types of videos where guys are flying, and maybe they have somebody else shooting it for them, or I know in some cases there be little cameras they can kind of plan and secure on the camera, and it films it for you. That's why I was asking. Do you think you might make more videos like that, where you might incorporate some of your music or your guitar tracks over the video?
Yeah, I want to.
It's like another outlet for you, you know. And again, you know, like you were telling me before, the last time I interviewed you, maybe about a year or so ago, you were telling me, you know, like you said for years, like you never got invited to NAMM, and then you started putting this stuff on YouTube, and now you were constantly getting invites and, you know, endorsements and stuff. And it's just it's amazing how great YouTube has been, you know, to guys like you know, for that.
Oh man, I can't agree with you enough there. And you know, we were talking about the lockdown situation earlier, and man, I have been counting my blessings as far as
YouTube.
that I've been doing YouTube and not been relying on touring. You know, because if it was different, you know, I would be screwed like a lot of other people. You know, but because so much of what I was doing was already on the internet, you know, I've been, you know, despite all the weird stuff going on in 2020, you know, I've been doing pretty well this year. But it's all because of YouTube and the internet and all that.
Yeah, in fact, I got to tell you, Max, I don't know if you've heard of this band. There's this band called Elliot Waits for No One, and they're a very eclectic band. They do metal, they got a little everything, and they have this one song on their album. It's not really too metal, but they did a cool looking like music video for it, and I told the guy, you know, it kind of reminded, because they have a robot in the video, and it kind of reminded me of that movie Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams. And I mean, this guy we're talking about, you know, kind of the success you've had with YouTube, and he tells me, oh yeah, Maxxxwell Carlisle, I know who that guy is. And he goes, you know, all the stuff he puts up on YouTube, what I just love about it, he's a great guitar player, but he says what makes those videos so fascinating is his personality. He's like a character. He's got a great personality in the way he does all his videos, you know.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, I hate to say that I'm not familiar with the band, but that's
well, yeah,
really cool.
that's why I was mentioning it to you, because you know, it was just amazing. Me talking to this guy the other day, interviewing him about his band, and your name came up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is." And he goes, "You know, I love that guy. He's a great guitar player, but even more than that, if you watch any of his videos, you know, his personality comes alive." And you know, perfect example of that is I was watching this instructional video you have up on your Facebook page, and it's this. It starts off with you holding like a can of Tab soda, and then and it's kind of like got the comedy effect because you're talking about tablatures and stuff, and so but that's kind of what he's talking about. You know, you got a great sense of humor, and you got a great knack for stuff like that. I mean, I saw it, you know, I mean, it's funny because Tab soda, that's been around for years, and I just heard because of this pandemic and stuff that Tab soda is not selling like it used to be, so they're going to stop making it soon.
Yeah. I know that one of the many fatalities of 2020, Tab soda.
Yeah. But now is that like kind of one of those YouTube videos? Because it says coming from your forthcoming instructional video, or is that just like one of those videos you do?
Yeah, no, that's from. I think the video you're talking about it's like
you're playing like a yellow guitar.
You know,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think I just took a few clips because I did make a full length instructional video. It's like 45 minutes long, and it's all about like 80s style guitar playing.
And is
so
that,
I really, you know, I kind of exaggerate, you know, the sort of 80s stuff in there. But I think I took a bunch of clips from that and put them into like a short video. And that's probably the video you saw.
Now the instructional video that we're talking about, now did that come out recently, or just it's been a number of years since it was originally released?
Oh, it came out about, a few months ago, you know, fairly recently, yeah.
And then another clip I seen on your YouTube that I never came across till now is it's called "The Power of Metal Compels Me," featuring Nita Strauss. I never realized you did a track with her. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's from an EP that I did, you know, several years back.
Yeah.
And I think there's 5 tracks on the EP. There's a vocalist, a guy named Michael Yancey, did a really good job, and it's you know, just a five track like straight ahead power metal EP. Yeah. And I was looking for you know, different, you know, guest people who could get involved, and this was before she was involved with Alice Cooper.
That's what I was going to ask you.
You know, to be totally honest, she was a little bit more accessible, and yeah, she, you know, agreed to do a guest solo, and that was a really fun project. It came out really good.
Now, being a guitar player yourself, were you just kind of aware of who she was at the time? Because it's amazing how she is kind of blown up on the guitar scene. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, she's one of my favorite guitar players, on the scene today.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, she's always been an LA guitar player, so different shows and so forth, and so yeah, I was already familiar with what she was working on and that kind of stuff. I talked to her and that kind of thing.
I mean, I remember even when they had, I don't know if you remember when they had the Kiss LA arena football team. She'd go and play and perform at some of those shows, which was kind of different, but that's where a lot of people too, first come to really get to know her. But I love that she's playing with Alice Cooper,
Oh yeah, I mean it's that career trajectory has been fascinating to see, and it's great. I mean obviously she's worked very, very hard, and it's great to see somebody who has been rewarded for their hard work.
Yeah. Okay. Now I could talk to you all night, Max, but I know you're very busy. So before you wrap it up, we talked a little bit about that instructional video you put out a number of years ago. Do you have anything else that you're currently working on that's in the works maybe for next year?
Yeah, I do, and this is a really fun thing because, to be totally honest, my YouTube stuff has really been my main focus for the past year or even couple years.
Yeah.
And I haven't done as much in terms of putting out music. I've done a few singles here and there, but I haven't released an album in a long time. And so right now I'm actually working. I'm sort of collaborating with another guitar player, a guy named Dean Casciano.
Oh, I've heard of him.
He's a great. He's from Massachusetts, Boston, I believe, and he's a great neoclassical, just very
he's heavily
traditional neoclassical stuff. And he and I are working on an album together, and it's like very kind of getting back to my neoclassical roots.
Wow.
Lots of just great shredding and little keyboard parts and cool orchestration parts and all instrumental. And it's something that we're working on right now, and I'm sure it'll be released sometime next year.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Really he's very, if it's who I think it is, he's very heavily influenced by Randy Rhoads. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and neoclassical, I think people will be surprised to learn how many metal guitar players or even hard rock guys are into neoclassical stuff. Richie Blackmore, I know he was really heavily influenced by that, and that's why if you listen to what he's doing these days, Blackmore's Night with his wife Candace, it sounds nothing like Deep Purple or Rainbow, but it's almost a lot of it sounds like almost like folk music, but it's very different. But yet I will tell you, the publicist for Blackmore's Night sent me a CD a few years back, and like a lot of people, I was kind of like, I don't know about this Blackmore's Night stuff, but to be fair, since they sent me a CD, I'm going to give it a listen. And again, it sounds nothing like Deep Purple or Rainbow, but I thought, if you listen to this with an open mind, it's not half bad,
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard some of the Blackmore's Night stuff, and I think the folksy vibe that you're talking about is very accurate.
Yeah.
But there's a time for that stuff, and I think if you're a fan of Rainbow, I mean, there's a time for other styles of music, and I think when it's appropriate, it's great that you can go to that artist again, for a different vibe. Yeah. So I like that stuff.
And so, how did you meet this other guitar player that you're working on the album with right now?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's a very neoclassical story. That sounds funny, but basically, he's a great luthier, and he does really cool guitar mods, and he builds guitars and things like that. And one thing in particular he does is he does scalloping on guitar necks. Wow! And so I had him, and I had kind of known about this ahead of time, before, but I hadn't really talked with him that much. Mm-hmm. So I contacted him about scalloping a neck for one of my guitars, and he did it. He did that and did a really good job on it and everything. And so we just kind of started talking then, and just started talking about music, and it just sort of went from there.
And I'm assuming this is going to be like a guitar type album, instrumental stuff, or have you thought if you might want to have a vocalist involved, or? So, not to kind of have to compete with anything, but do you think, would you compare it to something like what Marty Friedman and Jason Becker did together?
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, not to do a competition, but
yeah, that's what I mean.
Definitely,
that
stylistically, stylistically, I think it's right along those lines.
Yeah, and I bring that up only because I recently seen this documentary that came out. It's called Bay Area Godfathers. It's kind of like this about the San Francisco music scene, like especially the thrash scene, and like they mentioned that band Cacophony, which Marty and Jason were, and I remember seeing the album cover, with just Jason and Marty on it, and so before I ever even heard the band's music or anything, I thought, oh, this must be a guitar, like a guitar oriented band or album. I thought it was just like nothing but guitar music, and then come to find out, no, it's an actual band. They got a drummer and they got a singer, but see, we're missing. That's what we've been missing too. Like great guitar shred albums. I mean, there's not a whole lot of them. You know what I mean? Because a lot of guys do not play like you. Where they play kind of tastefully, and everything they do kind of fits the song. A lot of guys just like to show off how fast they can play. But that's one thing I got to tell people if they've never heard any of your music, Maxxwell, is you can shred with the best one, but you do it in a tasteful way.
Oh, thank you, man. I really. I appreciate that. You make a valid point that there are not a lot of just pure, guitar albums out right now. But I'll do what I can to change that, right?
Yeah, and I think fans will really. I know I will dig having some new music from you because, like you said, it's been quite a while. And the last time we talked, I don't know if you want to touch on this or not. I know you're part of this band. Society One. Do you want to? Because I know you're no longer with the band. Do you want to touch on that at all, or would you rather not talk about it?
Oh no, it's totally fine. I mean, yeah, I was in a band called Society One. It's like an industrial metal band. And
yeah.
I was in the band for a couple of years, and I had a good time in the band.
Yeah.
It was not a style of music that I'm really that associated with.
Yeah.
But
was that
we did a lot of live shows, a lot of fun shows, and I got along real well with everybody in the band.
Yeah.
That band has gone through many lineup changes.
Yeah.
With the exception of the lead singer has always been the guy there.
Yeah.
And it basically we had been working on a new album, and the singer he kind of wasn't happy with things, and so he just wanted to change the lineup, and so he
did that.
He did that. And it wasn't just me. I mean, he basically got rid of the entire band, and that's how it goes. It's fine.
That's his call. I mean, you're not losing any sleep over. You have a gig still. I mean, you already have stuff you're working on, so that's great. And I guess the proper way to end the interview, Maxxwell, before we do, is obviously the king of all guitar players, Edward Van Halen. Just this last month passed away. And I seen you comment a little bit. You want to talk about what Eddie meant to you, or like what's your favorite Van Halen album?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot lately, and to me, the thing that was so shocking about his death was that I never thought of Eddie Van Halen as a real person. To me, he was always, he was like a fictional character in a book or a story or something, like Superman or Batman or something like that. And so it never occurred to me that he could die.
Yeah, I hear you. I bet that's...
that makes sense. It was like...
I mean, he was the ultimate guitar god, kind of, and you're like, he's not of this earth, and he really no longer is. And while I remember sitting at my desk, watching TV on the day he died, and all of a sudden it came on the news, guitar legend Edward Van Halen died today, and I heard it and I was kind of shocked, but then again I really wasn't, because I known he'd been battling cancer, and over the last year been hearing all kinds of rumors about him getting cancer treatment, going between Europe and the United States. So I've been hearing stuff. So I wasn't totally shocked, but I was. And then I come to find out when the news breaks of his death, they start reporting that he's been battling the cancer since like 2000. And you stop and think about it. This guy's been battling cancer since the year 2000. I mean, what a fighter! I mean, he put in the fight, and he finally lost the battle. But that's amazing.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, he was prolific, right? I mean, there's so many great Van Halen albums, but at the same time, at 65, you do feel like we missed out on something still, like he hadn't been finished or something like that. And
I mean, he's definitely got his legacy. I mean, so no doubt he made his mark. The one I kind of feel bad for. I mean, feel bad for his son, obviously, and his family. But could you imagine being Alex Van Halen? I mean, I could see why. I mean, I don't think it would make sense for them to carry on Van Halen without Eddie. It just wouldn't make sense. But could you imagine being Alex Van Halen, playing with your younger brother all your life, and not only you guys make music together, but he's like your best friend, and no longer he's there.
I mean, it's got to be terrible for him, because I mean, that was, you kind of in one moment, you lose your brother and you lose your band. Kind of in at the same moment.
Yeah, that's what
I hope he. Yeah. I hope he's doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, even the day after it was announced, I read all this stuff. Van Halen has decided they're going to carry on without Eddie, and Woofy Van Halen, he's going to switch over to guitar. I'm like, I don't see that happening. And then he comes out, people are just making stuff up. I mean, that's awful, But I really could not see. I think as a fan, I don't know that I'd want to see Van Halen carry on without Eddie. I just would not be the same to me,
I agree. I mean, I could see like a bunch of different musicians getting together, and doing a tribute or something like that.
Yeah,
that
I think would be cool
as far as the actual band, I'm sure it's done.
I think it'd be cool to do like what they did for Freddie Mercury, like you said, like one day, one show, even have like David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar get up and they do their songs or whatever, and then different guitar players kind of take the solo spot. I think that would be the way to do it,
Yeah.
Well, again, Maxwell, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to me today. This will probably be last time for a while, because the year is wrapping up. But the interview probably will go up. I'm gonna see if I can get up either next couple of weeks or early December. I'll let you know once it posts, and if you'd like, post on any of your sites. But when the other project gets going next year, let me know, and I'd love to interview you about that as well.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, take care, my friend, and happy holidays. Bye-bye.